Remember, your job as a conscious adult isn't to prohibit the waves from coming in. It's remembering that you can swim back to shore. Big feelings pull us out to sea sometimes. Some waves brush our feet, some knock us down, some drag us under for a while. And that is why I love writing reparative actions ahead of time. So when the wave hits, you have something solid to reach for. Welcome to Grow with Robin Breckenridge, a podcast about stepping into the most fully expressed, aligned, and conscious version of yourself. Here, we dive into the real work of personal growth, establishing boundaries, understanding your patterns, building self-trust, healing emotional wounds, and creating relationships that feel safe, authentic, and fulfilling. I'm Robin, a life and relationship coach, and in each episode, we'll explore the tools, insights, and conversations that will help you not just improve your life and relationships, but truly transform them. You don't have to just go through it. Let's grow through it, and let's do it together. Hi, everyone. And I just wanted to say, wherever it is that you're listening from, because I know that there are people listening all over the United States. I know that there are people listening from all over the world. So I just wanted to say that wherever you are, I'm so glad you're here. And I also just want to tell you how incredibly brave you are to even entertain changing your patterns. And we have talked about how we show up and take care of our inner child, our inner teenager, how we learn to reparent them. And today is a special episode because I'm going to talk about the maladaptive adult part of us, which is heavily influenced by the coping mechanisms and behaviors of our wounded inner child and our wounded inner teenager. But I'm going to also introduce something so important to you guys today. So let's start by talking about the maladaptive adult. I think that it's pretty relatable that there's a version of us that learned survival before it learned how to keep itself safe. It's a version that hits the fuck it button. Not just because we're reckless, but because it's the only way we knew how to stop the overwhelm, or the only way we knew how to cope or manage some of those really, really tough feelings that we had felt throughout our life. And that part is not the defective part in us. It's the maladaptive adult. It's the part of us that only had the resources to manage and tolerate our feelings that the child and teen inside of us use to manage its own pain. It shuts down, it checks out, it overfunctions, it spirals. It might think that apathy is safer than hope or action, control is safer than trust. But it will have you continuing to do the same thing over and over. And there's a saying that I love to amend. It says that doing the same thing over and over and over again is the definition of insanity. Well, I disagree. I don't think it's the definition of insanity. I think it's the definition of unconsciousness. It's what happens when our nervous system reaches for what's familiar, even if it hurts. It's dating the same pattern in a different person. It's choosing relief over repair. It's self-abandonment dressed up as self-protection. But we don't have to do that anymore. We don't need to meet our needs or manage and tolerate our feelings in ways that leave us feeling guilty, shamed, or disconnected from ourselves. We have choices now. We can pause instead of explode. We can choose attunement instead of trying to exile the parts of us that are just human. We can bring our conscious adult online and finally do it differently. I know that the term do it differently is a fan favorite on this podcast and with my clients. So guess what? We're going to talk more about how to do it differently. For some of us, the maladaptive adult learned that shutting down was safer than feeling, that control was safer than trusting something or someone, that apathy hurt less than hope. Hey, at that time of your life, these were brilliant survival skills. They protected you from the weight of pain that there was no possible way that you could process then. But I think that if you're listening to this probably resonates in some way. Now it keeps you circling the same patterns, same self-sabotage, perfectionism, shame, guilt, burnout. And I think the most frustrating part of this is that most of us try. We say to ourselves, like, this time I'm going to do it differently. This time I'm going to stick to it. And then we hit the fuck it button. This part of you can hold up your life and your dreams because it simply doesn't know how to do it any differently. And the work is not to judge it. It's to get curious and to bring curiosity and care to the parts that are underneath that pattern, underneath the survival strategy. And that part is a little kid or a teenager who is yelling or whispering, "Help me." And that's where your conscious adult comes in. The you that has agency and awareness. And it's not that we live in that part of ourselves all the time. You will absolutely go in and out of parts of self. You will go in and out of patterning. But the best part about consciousness is it eventually taps you back on the shoulder and says, hey, don't go back to sleep. The solution here is not to exile the part of us that got hurt or the part of us that has needs. The best thing we can do is say, hey, thank you for getting us this far, but I can drive from here. Here's something that's true. Sometimes we black out in a part of ourself. We disconnect from our conscious relational mind and wake up in the aftermath. The argument, the spending spree, the silence, the binge. That's not failure. It's just your system trying to keep you safe using something that was familiar that used to work. So let's get real with our expectations. The goal isn't to never go back there again. It's to find your way back faster. It's to dust yourself off and get back up. That is where repair comes in. Because when your feelings flood in, and there isn't a conscious adult there to protect you, to nurture, to connect, to empower, then the child or teen will usually get behind the wheel. And that is where you're going to see your trauma responses come in to protect you. Remember those? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn. Remember, your job as a conscious adult isn't to prohibit the waves from coming in. It's remembering that you can swim back to shore. Big feelings pull us out to sea sometimes. Some waves brush our feet, some knock us down, some drag us under for a while. And that is why I love writing reparative actions ahead of time. So when the wave hits, you have something solid to reach for. So here's some reminders of what doing it differently when your maladaptive adult is up and that part of you is about to hit the fuck it button. Some examples could be, instead of hiding or isolating, text someone in your trust category. Instead of numbing, go for a walk. It might look like having boundaries with yourself and others. It might look like, instead of controlling, pause and ask, where do I actually have power here? These are just small shifts that can rebuild your trust. They're proof that you can meet your feelings and manage and tolerate them without abandoning yourself and taking other people hostage. I have a really big example of how to do it differently. Honestly, I have been itching, waiting to bring this to the podcast, but I don't want to overwhelm anyone. So when that maladaptive adult is up, or any part of self, because this is such a universal means to attune to your parts of self, to you and to others. Let's go back to attunement. AVPS is a tool that I use to emotionally attune to your parts of self, to yourself, to your actual children in your life, to others in your life. It's something that I adapted from Dr. Becky Kennedy, who is an amazing resource for conscious parenting. If you guys don't know who she is and you have kids, please read her books, watch her YouTube videos, and follow her on Instagram. She's incredible, and she has taught me so much in this work. So she came up with a way to emotionally attune to your children that she calls AVP. I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. I wanted to add one little thing so that it was relevant to the work that I do, which is the support part. So what does AVPS mean? AVPS stands for acknowledge, validate, permit, support. It is one of my absolute favorite tools that I use in my own life and that I use to attune to my son when he is activated. And I have taught every person that I work with this acronym to pause and be able to emotionally attune. It's just something that most of us did not get when we were upset and activated because our parents most likely had no idea how to do it. It was not modeled to them by their parents. We didn't have a Dr. Becky. We didn't have social media and Instagram where we could share these things. So let me break it down part by part. And my big invitation for everybody this week is to implement AVPS in their life. Okay. So let's start with A. A means acknowledge. Let's say you're activated in something. You want to name what feeling is coming up. I feel anxious. I feel angry. I feel exhausted. I feel overwhelmed. The first step is that we want to acknowledge it instead of deny it, judge it, minimize it. We just acknowledge it. I think I'm feeling angry. I think I'm feeling upset, whatever it is. Naming the emotion connects you back to the present moment. One of the most profound things that I do in this work, and any wonderful therapist and coach does, is they meet you where you are. For some ungodly reason, it is so hard to meet ourselves where we are sometimes because we just frankly do not want to be there. Like, I have had clients call me and say, I am still upset over my ex. It has been 4 weeks. Shouldn't I be over it by now? And that is a really great example of, I don't want to be here. It's super uncomfortable. So I'm going to judge the feeling, make myself wrong for feeling it. And that is not emotional attunement. V stands for validate. This is actually my favorite part of AVPS. Validate starts with this particular phrase. Of course I feel ... So let's use an example. I'm going to acknowledge it. I feel scared. Validate. Of course I feel scared. This has happened to me my entire life. Of course I feel scared. I've always been alone in any solution I've ever had. Of course I feel scared. This is scary. Validation tells your system, this makes sense. You get to be where you are. I think that one of the most vulnerable things we can utter to ourselves, and even more vulnerable to utter to someone else, is I'm scared. I know that there have been times in my life where I have done everything other than admit to myself that I'm scared. And if we think back to a kid, if they go, Mom, I'm scared, what do? We help them. I mean, if we're an emotionally attuned parent, we go, hold on, let me help you. But yet it's something that we don't offer to ourselves. Often we will intellectualize our feelings and our experience. You shouldn't be afraid. You're fine. It's not that big of a deal. Look at how the people over there are handling it. You go try to be seen and heard and feel like someone has your back when someone tells you that your experience is not the experience you're having, or you're wrong for having it. Let's go to the P in AVPS. Permit. It means that you're allowing the feeling to exist without making yourself wrong. Permit just means that for as long as you can, even if it's a second, even if it's a minute, we do not try to make ourselves be anywhere other than where we are. So an example of permitting is you're scared. It's okay to feel like this right now. I'm not going to try to talk you out of it. You are not feeding the fire here by permitting it. You are limiting the amount of resistance that is up when a feeling comes up. Because remember, the end goal here, if we're trying to live an aligned life and live our best life, is not to get away from feelings. It's to attune to them, to see what is the message that the feeling is communicating. What is the need underneath the feeling? You guys, I get it. I'm going to teach you a lot more about this, but probably you have an idea. If someone's scared, they need safety. They need help. If someone is overwhelmed, they don't want to do it alone. There's too much that they're trying to tackle at one time. There's so many ways that without even you guys learning specifically what the feelings mean, I bet you can start to meet it. Now let's go to the S that stands for support. Dr. Becky, genius, created a beautiful system with AVP. The reason why I like S for support is because if we bring in that this is something we can use to attune to our parts of self, our inner child, our inner teenager, then our job is to bring new tools, new ways to support those parts of self, new ways of showing up to help support that part to manage and tolerate feelings differently. So support means you show up for that part. You speak kindly, you use your tools, you move your body, you set a boundary, you reach out to someone you trust for help and support. This is where we don't stay in our victim. We shift from disempowerment to empowerment. So let's look at what using AVPS as an emotional attunement tool can look like as an example. So let's say you are setting a boundary with a family member for the first time. You've listened to some of the episodes, you're ready to do it, but you're feeling afraid. Let's use AVPS. A, acknowledge, I feel afraid right now. I'm a big fan of putting your hand on your heart. I think it's a really great way to connect your body to what you're doing, but also I think our inner child and those younger parts of us live in our body. So whenever I put my hand on my heart, I feel like I'm connecting directly to them. So A, acknowledge, I feel afraid right now. V, validate. Of course I feel afraid, ... This is a new experience. I've never done it before. And when I was younger, trying to protect myself or tell the truth might have meant losing love, connection, or approval. And that fear still lives in my nervous system. P, permit, hand on heart. I'm just going to sit here for a moment and allow myself to feel afraid. I don't need to rush it. I don't need to make it wrong. I don't need to disconnect from feeling it. S, support. I can support myself while I feel afraid by writing out the boundaries that I want to express. Maybe I could set up a session with my coach or therapist on the day that I'm going to set that boundary so I have extra support. I can reach out to a friend that I trust afterwards so that I feel supported. I can take care of myself before and after I set the boundary. Maybe it's putting on soft, comfortable clothes, feeding myself nourishing food, or grounding movement. So remember, you will still move in and out of your parts. It's part of being human. But every time you come back with awareness, you strengthen the muscle of shifting from survival to self-parenting. You stop managing your feelings with avoidance and control and start meeting them with attunement. Repeat this with me if it feels aligned. I can meet the intensity of my feelings with presence, not punishment. I can feel what I feel and still choose safety. I can lead myself now with attunement, care, and conscious support. You do not need to exile your feelings or your parts of self to live an aligned life. You just need to remind those parts that they no longer have to carry it all on their own. You can take the wheel now. With love, with boundaries, with compassion, with attunement. That is how we do it differently. That is how we give our inner child and a teenager a different ending to their story. So, my direct invitation for this week, use AVPS when you feel activated. Start practicing it on yourself. And then when your kid comes to you activated, because I've told some stories about my own child and how I could have shown up to him with attunement or a lack of consciousness. I don't try to talk my son out of his feelings. I try to attune by acknowledging, permitting, validating, and supporting. So practice AVPS on yourself when you're activated this week and keep practicing it and write it on a Post-it note, because some of these tools you'll start using and then you'll forget. But if you write them down, we can come back to them. Add it to your list of repairs for your parts of self. And then start using it with other people. I'm telling you, this is a genius relational hack. Thank God. Bless you, Dr. Becky. So this week, we're AVPSing. We are not hitting the fuck it button. We are doing it differently. Next week, we're going to talk more about how we shift out of patterns. So go emotionally attune, you crazy kids. Let's see what happens to your life when you start practicing that one. I'll see you next week. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for being here and for doing this work. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Come connect with me over on TikTok at Robin Breckenridge or Instagram at Coach with Robin, where I share even more insights, tools, and conversations around boundaries, self-trust, relational healing, and so much more. And just a quick reminder, this podcast is for educational and personal growth purposes only. The insights and tools I share are based on my experience as a life and relationship coach and are meant for general guidance. Each person's story is unique, and the nuances of individual experiences can't always be addressed in this format. What's shared here may not be applicable to every situation, especially those involving abuse, oppression, severe mental illness, or systematic harm. If you or someone you know is in crisis, please seek support from a qualified mental health professional or emergency resources. Thank you for listening and for showing up for yourself in this way. Take care, and I'll see you next time.